What's up? I'm Brian Tong, your weekly tour guide, and welcome to the Apple Bite for everything, good and bad, inside the wonderful world of Apple. Now, we showed you the rumored casing of the Apple iPhone 6s last week, and this week there's more after a purported schematic of the phone from Engadget Japan's sources revealed a change in thickness by 0.2 millimeters. It's so subtle that current cases are still expected to fit the phone. That might be the most amazing news, well, until next year's iPhone. Now, a Wall Street Journal report says Apple is requesting suppliers to produce a record number of iPhones by the end of this year, somewhere around 90 million units, and betting that the new changes will outperform the iPhone 6 and 6 Plus from last year. They still expect the new iPhone to feature the rumored Force Touch screen, and that's really believed to be behind the slightly thicker design based on the current leaks. Now, 9to5Mac also reports that in addition to Force Touch, an upgraded camera, and the new Qualcomm LTE chip we talked about last week, the next iPhone will most likely include NFC hardware with fewer and more efficient chips, and a new flash memory that will still remain at 16 gigs for the minimum capacity. Now, you can see the difference here in this side-by-side comparison of the logic boards for both phones that 9to5Mac acquired. And finally, bringing NFC to the iPhone, and I really mean finally, it dovetails nicely with the latest finding from Patently Apple that reports the Big A applied for a patent for a method of transferring money from one phone to the other. Now, the transaction would take place in the Wallet app, the app previously known as Passbook, and Touch ID would be used to authorize it. So, you know, Venmo's looking over their shoulder right now like, say what? And my friends in the UK, Apple Pay is set to go live on July the 14th, and if you can use it, you're going to dig it. All right, Apple seeded the third beta for OS X El Capitan, the third Watch OS 2 beta, and the third release of iOS 9's beta. The iOS 9 release brings Apple Music to developers who were unable to access it in previous betas. It also includes Apple's new News app with a curated list of news based on your interests, but it's only for US developers right now. There's new streamlined two-factor authentication for security. iPad app folders now display apps 4x4 instead of the previous 3x3, and you now have dedicated photo albums for your selfies and screenshots, which is super important. Now, official versions of the operating systems are coming this fall. All right, let's follow up on some more stories from Apple Music. I told you how I felt about it last week, and everything really still holds true. You all know how much I disliked Connect, and a lot of the Apple Bite Nation reached out to tell me the trick to get rid of it and replace it with my playlist, so I'm returning the favor for those of you who don't know yet. So check this out. Jump into your settings, then go to General, then Restrictions, and if they're not turned on, you'll need to turn them on. Then look for Apple Music Connect and turn it off. Now, when you go into Apple Music, the Connect icon will be replaced with your playlist icon and the actual music you've always wanted to listen to. Booyah! And for those of you waiting for home sharing to return to your iOS devices for music listening, since Apple squashed it in iOS 8.4, Eddie Q says it will be returning in iOS 9, but having it disappear without any explanation, you know, that's getting a bad apple. Okay, and some fun stuff. The guys from Everything Apple Pro had nothing better to do, so they decided to see how many iPhones it takes to stop a Russia AK-74 bullet. Now, lots of fun eye candy here, and the final result. It takes 5 iPhones to stop a bullet, but the 5th one was a clone and not an official iPhone, so I guess that means they're going to have to just do this test all over again. Except they decided to blow everything else up with a shotgun. And if that's not absurd, how about this one? I'm a big NBA fan, you all know that. Well, San Antonio Spurs three-point specialist Matt Bonner, aka the Red Rocket, told the Concord Monitor that he believed the tennis elbow he developed in his non-shooting arm was caused by the new iPhone. He said, "It was way bigger than the last one, and I think because I got that new iPhone, it was a strain to use it. You have to stretch further to hit the buttons, and I honestly think that's how I ended up developing it." See, Matt, if you had been watching the Apple Bite from the start, you could have learned about double tapping the home button, unless you have small hands, but you're 6'10", so that can't be it. And really, for all you big screen phone fans, somewhere Steve Jobs is smiling. And before we go, we have to show you some feedback of the week from last week's show. Ricardo says, "LOL, my Siri activated when he said, 'Hey Siri,' LOL." Yuzman Azua called it the Apple Bite Pride Edition. And Kishin Hargovin said, weird intro. All right, that's going to do it for this week's show. You can always email us at theapplebite@cnet.com or tweet me at Brian Tong. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll catch you all next time for another Bite of the Apple.